We've reached the midway point of the NFL season, and you know what time it is. It's time for the ever famous, highly criticized, highly informative football game plan midseason mock draft. Before we get started, as always, we have to take a look at the mock draft rules and what we're not about to do in this video. Number one, we're not going to focus on how high or how low a player goes. We're not about to whine about player X, Y, or Z not being a first rounder. We're definitely not about to play the but what about game, and we're not about to go back and forth about team A won't be picking that high or picking that low. But on the flip side, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get familiar with some 2019 NFL draft prospects. We're going to spark a healthy debate or discussion in the comment section below, and we will most definitely enjoy the hell out of this mock draft, and we'll get things kicked off with the San Francisco 49ers, who own the #1 overall pick. It seems like the Niners keep selecting defensive linemen high in the draft. Nick Bosa out of Ohio State gives them a chance to get it right and smash a home run with the selection. Bosa is going to be a fantastic pro. I went with quarterback Dwayne Haskins for the New York Giants. To me, he has always been the clear-cut top draft-eligible passer in college football this season. Look at his placement, his overall accuracy, his decision-making, his athleticism, his arm strength and velocity, and the overall calmness within this game. He reminds me a lot of Teddy Bridgewater with a stronger arm. So if you need more film on Haskins, go back and look at the games he played last season and continue to watch him flourish the rest of the way this year. In my opinion, he's an elite player. Montez Sweat gives the rebuilding Raiders another edge rusher to pair up with Arden Key. Sweat is a legit baller and should thrive very early as a rookie. The Cards could use some help up front, but I didn't want to pass on a premier cornerback prospect in Greedy Williams out of LSU. Can you score and can you take the ball away is what I look for in premier picks in the first round, and Greedy Williams is the type of player that can do both. The Buffalo Bills get help for Josh Allen with wide receiver N'Keal Harry, who has very good athleticism to make the acrobatic catch look easy, and by the fact that he returns punts for Arizona State speaks volumes to what they think about his athletic abilities, similar to Keenan Allen in that regard. The Browns get another premier defender in Ed Oliver. He could easily serve multiple roles up front, and whoever is the head coach in Cleveland will have themselves one hell of a defense if they can somehow grab the Houston Cougar. Gang Green needs more juice off the edge, and Josh Allen out of Kentucky, who is balling out of control this year for the surprising Wildcats, will give them exactly that. Getting more dynamic on the perimeter, I went with Kelvin Harmon out of NC State for the Indianapolis Colts. He gives them another legitimate threat to score opposite of T.Y. Hilton. The Jags finally get themselves a new quarterback in Oregon's Justin Herbert. I'm not as high on Herbert as most. He kind of reminds me of a mix between Ryan Tannehill and Paxton Lynch, but with the way the Jags structured the Bortles deal, it gives them some flexibility to bring Herbert along slowly to eventually be their guy. Jonah Williams helps the Broncos up front along the offensive line, especially the right side. I think he's going to be a day-one impact player wherever he goes. The Lions get defensive pass rush help with Colin Farrell out of Clemson. It's been a sore spot for Detroit for quite some time, and head coach Matt Patricia, being a defensive guy, will look to rectify that problem in the draft. The Titans add some beef up front with Oklahoma's Cody Ford. If Josh Allen out of Kentucky was still on the board, I would have added him here for the Titans, but Ford also feels the need for Tennessee and could have an instant impact immediately. With the second of their 3 first-round picks, I want to add a premier receiving option in Anthony Johnson out of Buffalo for the Oakland Raiders. He has been one of the more dynamic and consistent receivers in the country and would fill an immediate need for the Raiders. Atlanta gets the talented Rashawn Gary in this mock out of Michigan. He's got some versatility to his game and gives head coach Dan Quinn a ton of options in how to utilize him. The one thing I do know about Gary is that he can flat out play. The Bucs get better along the offensive line with Dalton Risner out of Kansas State. He may be one of those players that will go higher in a real draft. He's been excellent for the Wildcats this season. The Eagles get better along the defensive interior with Jeffrey Simmons out of Mississippi State. Simmons, along with his teammate Montez Sweat, have terrorized SEC offensive linemen all season long. The Dolphins get better defensively with Quinnen Williams out of Alabama, who's played well this season for the Crimson Tide. Miami is a bit thin on the interior defensive line, and Williams can step right in and be of assistance in a big way. Baltimore adds one of my favorite prospects in the draft class in guard Chris Lindstrom out of Boston College. He's gotten better each and every season and has transformed himself into one of, if not the, top guard in the nation. With the first of their 2 first-round picks, I want to add more pass rush for the Green Bay Packers, and I went with Florida State's defensive end, Brian Burns, who's been outstanding this year and would feel an immediate need coming off the edge for Green Bay. In an offensive line heavy first round midseason mock draft, the Vikings add Wisconsin's David Edwards, another place where selecting an offensive lineman is a very good investment in your offense's productivity. The Seahawks get Dexter Lawrence out of Clemson, who has been one of the nation's best players since stepping foot on campus. He fills a big-time need up front for the Seahawks. I went along the offensive line for the Bengals with Greg Little out of Ole Miss. I like how he's transformed his body to be a bit more athletic, and I've been impressed with what he has done so far in the field this season. The Chargers keep getting snake bitten in the offseason with injuries, especially at corner, so I want to give them one of the best cornerbacks in the draft in Georgia's DeAndre Baker, who has outstanding press man skills. The Panthers get a high-rising prospect in Ja'Kai Polite out of Florida, who has that dog in him that you want to see from a defender coming off the edge, and I'm a big fan of his game and what he brings to the table. With the Raiders' third pick in the first round, I went inside linebacker with Notre Dame's Tavon Coney. He's been one of the more dominant inside backers this season and would step in and star for the Raiders, helping solidify their front seven. I went cornerback for the Texans and gave them Michael Jackson out of Miami. I was at the BC game this past weekend and came away very impressed with his skill set and can envision him thriving in that Texans defense on the outside. The Steelers bolstered their linebacking core with LSU's Devin White. He still has upside to his game and has taken some major steps forward this season for LSU. The Redskins select one of the major wild cards in the draft in Buffalo's quarterback Tyree Jackson. The 6'7", 245-pound Jackson has the ability to work touchdown and check down in the passing game, still has growth left in his game, and also has the athleticism to thrive in today's NFL. This selection will give the Redskins a moldable prospect that can be groomed, not rushed, to eventually take over for Alex Smith when his contract is up. This would be a wise move for the Redskins to get a quarterback with upside to develop slowly. New England finds another receiving threat at tight end in Iowa's Noah Fant. Something just doesn't look right with Gronk, and adding a guy like Fant out of Iowa gives them the next in line threat at the position. With their second pick in the first round, I went Raekwon Davis for the Green Bay Packers, bolstering the depth and athleticism along the defensive line. Davis is a big man that can move and will be a good pick for Green Bay. The Chiefs need defensive help, especially in the secondary, and I chose cornerback Chris Boyd out of Texas, who has blossomed this season for the Longhorns, playing some of the best ball of his career. The last pick in the first round belongs to the Los Angeles Rams, and Jerry Tillery out of Notre Dame gives them some talented depth at defensive tackle and could potentially take over if they don't decide to resign Ndamukong Suh this offseason. Now, Tillery has been stellar for the Fighting Irish all season long. Since some teams don't own first-round picks, I didn't want them to feel left out in this midseason mock draft, so here are some small college players to keep an eye on for teams outside of the first round. The Cowboys get more depth up front with Elon's Olisameka Udoa. He's been one of those premier players at the FCS level, a stud for the Phoenix in their ground game, and would fit in nicely in Dallas. For a guy that size, he has some excellent feet, and he's also on the Senior Bowl watch list. The Bears go defensive line here with Kalen Saunders out of Western Illinois. He's got cat-like quickness off the ball and is one of the best defensive linemen in the entire FCS. And the Saints add another receiving threat with Princeton's Jesper Horsted. He's a 6'4", 220-pound wideout that has the burst to get separation and the ball skills to make any type of catch needed to get the job done.